When it comes to life and death, you'd like to think that gender was irrelevant, but females are half as likely to receive defibrillation from bystanders than men. Why?
They're called boobs, Ed.
New research has found people are less likely to perform this potentially life-saving service because they're uncomfortable touching a stranger's breast. Experts finding it's gotten worse over the years.
There is a reluctance to expose a woman's chest, to remove clothing, to remove bras, to expose a woman's breasts, which is, we think, part of the reason why people may be more reluctant to apply a defibrillator to a woman as compared to a man.
Despite all Australian states and territories having Good Samaritan laws which protect bystanders acting in good faith, people fear they'll be accused of sexual harassment and would rather wait for a paramedic. But that could be fatal.
Every second counts in a cardiac arrest, so it is vital that members of the public step up and do CPR and use defibrillators. We know that the cardiac arrest survival rates we have in Australia are very high. Victoria has the second highest cardiac arrest survival in the world, and we wouldn't be able to do that without the members of the public.
For Emma McRae, quick-acting employees at a local supermarket saved her life.
I don't know exactly how long until someone started doing the CPR, but it was two of the staff members at Aldi who did that, and they had just completed a refresher course for their first aid, so they knew exactly what they were doing.
They managed to keep her alive until paramedics arrived. When they did, they used a defibrillator on her.
I had nothing but gratitude, thank yous, but I do remember feeling afterwards, for a little while afterwards, kind of thinking, like, all these people would have seen me, like, being a bit, that's really embarrassing because, I'm a school teacher. But that didn't last very long because at the end of the day, the alternative is I wasn't going to be alive.
She hopes other people will be able to push past that discomfort.
You have to try. It's not scary. I know defibrillator can be a really scary word, and people get very nervous and very anxious around them, but it's just a matter of being familiar with them. They tell you what to do, and they will make the difference between that person getting to go home or not.
Dr Elizabeth Paratz is a cardiologist and the lead researcher in this actual study. So, Dr Paratz, what concerns people most about using a defibrillator on a woman?
Well, I think in a nutshell, it's concerns about exposing a woman's chest, and particularly if we think about when a heart stops, it might be in a public area, and probably will be someone you don't know. And the idea of doing CPR on them, pressing on their chest, that might be able to be done through clothing. That might be okay. But then exposing them to put the defibrillator pads on to shock their heart back to a normal rhythm, a lot of people, I think, would think that's a step too far for me. I might just wait for the paramedics. But defibrillators double your chances of survival, so we can't withhold them from women.
I don't mean this to be offensive, Doctor, but a lot of times this kind of research is super depressing, especially in the medical field when it relates to females in particular. Did you find anything in your research that was positive for women?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm really grateful to you for bringing that element of it up. It really isn't all bad news. And the thing that's positive about this is that women's outcomes are continuing to improve. So if you or I were to have our heart stopped today, we'd be about 6 times more likely to get bystander defibrillation than we would have 20 years ago.
Wow. Okay.
So the rates for women are going up, bystanders are doing more. The issue is that men today are 16 times more likely than men 20 years ago. So what we're talking about is that the overall numbers of bystander interventions have gone up. That's great. But there's this gap between men and women that's inappropriate and shouldn't exist. And that's what we need to nip in the bud.
So, Doc, how can we help people feel more comfortable performing CPR or using a defibrillator on people with the breasts?
Yeah, I've got a lot of suggestions in that regard. I think the first thing is attending a CPR course. I obviously encourage all Australians to do that. But when we do those courses, we should be having female scenarios and visibly female mannequins. If we look for female mannequins specifically, even if we're trying to achieve that gender parity, most of the female mannequins for CPR on the market just have longer hair. They still don't have breasts. So we need to be actually really consciously trying to practice CPR on real-world women and talk about these scenarios so that they're just second nature if we're ever in that situation.
Doctor, you mentioned how important bystander intervention is, but for people who are watching at home who have never seen someone go into cardiac arrest, what should we be on the lookout for and what should we do?
Thank you so much for asking that question. So I guess the overall sign is that the person has become unresponsive and collapsed. And that really, in and of itself, is enough to call an ambulance right there and say, I think this person might be in cardiac arrest, should I start CPR? And usually people will talk you through it. And if you're in any doubt, starting CPR while you're waiting to get through is very appropriate.
Now, also, when you're talking about defibrillators, though, I've seen them around more than you realise in shopping centres, by swimming pools, obviously. I've never actually thought about ever having to use it. That's a big part of it. The idea of, I love the idea of rubbing them together and having to go clear, but could I actually do that? Is part of it also people going, I don't even know how these things work. It sounds terrifying without some kind of medical degree.
There may be an element of that, but the fact that they are getting used more on men than women suggests that it's not just discomfort with the act of using the defibrillator itself. I would also say the defibrillators, they do talk you through it. They'll tell you if a shock is advised. They'll tell you what to do. So it's worth having a go. If you can defibrillate someone before the paramedics get there, you're increasing their chances of survival so much.
Wow. Well, I feel bad that I wasn't commended on asking a very good question, but Dr. Paratz, thank you for the time.
You did good, you did good.
Thanks, guys, appreciate it. Dr. Elizabeth Paratz, thank you very much.
Thank you so much for having me.